After a very successful day one and a lot of takeaways, we are now heading towards a very interesting session this morning. Our first session would be on energy storage, prospects, and economics in Indian context. Please join me as I welcome the esteemed panelists of the session. Can you all put your hands together as I invite the moderator of the session? May I invite on stage Alexandra Hogoween-Rotter, who is Electricity Sector Lead, Third Derivative. Good morning. And may I also request these distinguished speakers of the session to kindly join us in. May I invite on stage Director Vision Mechatronics Private Limited, Dr. Rashi Gupta. Warm welcome to you. May I now invite Manager Energy Transformation World Business Council of Sustainable Development, Surbhi Singhvi. Good morning, very warm welcome to you. And we also being joined by Mr. Satyanarayan Reddy Desai, Chief Commercial Officer, Henri Power. Good morning and a very warm welcome. And may I now invite on stage Senior Sector Specialist, Energy, KFW Development Bank, Mr. Nishit Srivastava. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be joined by Mr. Sunil Dayal, who is the Senior Energy Finance Expert, World Bank, in some time. We've been indicated that he's on his way and should be joining us shortly. Just to discuss a few of the pointers that we're going to discuss in this session, it would be around the current energy landscape, policy regulations, government support, regulatory challenges, technological advancements, research and development efforts, economic consideration, financial incentives, market dynamics, growth projections, business models, integration with renewables, and so on and so forth. Without any much delay, may I request the moderator of the session to kindly take over. Over to you, Alexander.
Thank you so much, Sushmita. So thank you so much for joining us early on this morning. It's lovely to be here. I was just saying that I've been to RE Expo the past almost 8 years now. It's always great to see the energy and the new players, the new developers. I do want to spend as much time at the panel as possible, so I'll keep my remarks very brief. But I think, on one hand, we're very optimistic, we're very excited. We have people on the stage who are doing kind of tremendous things in energy storage. On the other hand, globally, 45 gigawatts of energy storage was installed. Only 0.1 of that was in India. So we've got 7% of the world's electricity and a fraction of 1% of the world's energy storage. So, keep that in mind. On one hand, I want to hear about what India is doing great and what India is doing well and all the fantastic companies and projects. But I also want to hear how we can accelerate, how we can move faster, how we can kind of catch up with the rest of the world. And so to start, I really want to let Dr. Rashi speak first. She's doing fantastic projects all over the world, so I'd love to hear a little bit about what kind of innovations she's working on and how we can bring some of those to India.
Well, India has always been a pro-storage market. We like to store everything. I mean, anybody who's heard me in the previous panels would also say that she's repeating this because this is a very important aspect of our culture. And now we are really learning how to store electricity at the value that we need it. So there's a lot of innovation that comes in this energy storage segment. And there's a low-hanging fruit currently, which is the C&I sector. Having it, with the second life. I mean, last 15 years in this energy storage industry, being a pioneer in India, I have been advocating first life and I've been advocating, energy storage is the main key that you need to focus on for so long. But today I'm going to say that second life is also equally important. Back then there was no second life, but today there is a second life which really makes sense. So we've also launched a new second life product for the C&I sectors in specific in collaboration with JSW MG Motors India. And this is something which is India's first high voltage, second life repurposed battery. Now, why I say this is a good innovation is because it is a cushion. There's a gap in the market where there is a traditional energy storage, which is on the DG, the lead acid batteries or the UPS batteries, and then you have these new advanced lithium chemistries and vanadium or sodium, all these new chemistries. But the transition has still not happened the way we've looked at it. Even there were tenders which were placed and they were cancelled. But the fear of losing out on the pricing, the technological evolution that is happening every now and then. I mean, every few days you see something new coming up. So how do you cope up with that? So CNI has these challenges, you know. So for them to transit from existing systems that they have to what they should be using in terms of sustainability, in terms of their ESG reportings, they have not been able to reach there. So giving them this kind of a product in between in a segment to allow them a smooth transition, maybe within 3 years or 5 years, and having a trust built. I mean, what if this doesn't work? You know, when we go for the kind of contracts and negotiations with them, they have this first question: what if this doesn't work? What do we do? So despite having despite, you know, the world being using energy storage worldwide, still India has not reached that point of having a trust on the technology. So this kind of innovation will give them the breathing space that they need to transit to actually a new first life kind of a battery, without burdening their pockets, without affecting the balance sheets to a great extent, you know. This is something that we have recently innovated. However, with the first life, and something that is very important to understand how technologically challenging making a second life battery is, because when you get a second life battery, you do not get it from one single source. It's from multiple different vehicles, multiple years of manufacturing. I mean, different years of manufacturing. Someone comes from 2019, some 20, some 24, some even beyond, like 16, 17. So how do you balance that out, you know? How do you match these batteries and how do you make it is something that was very technologically challenging, and that too at a high voltage. Low voltage is still simpler. It's easier. But when you go at high voltages, it becomes very challenging. So, you know, getting that state-of-art technology in understanding active balancing and making a robust system to make it safe and to perform just as your first life would do. Because if it is not going to perform as a first life, it is not going to make sense for anybody to adopt to it. So all those technological challenges, we took about a year's time to, you know, streamline, finalize it, and then here at the battery show, we are with this new innovation this time. So that's something which is new in the sector that I feel today.
Yes, thank you so much. I feel every time I see you, Dr. Rashi, every year there's always some new innovative technology, and so it's so great to see Indian leaders such as yourself really pushing things forward. You know, you mentioned CNI as a really crucial space for your business, but with that I want to turn to Surbi. So Surbi works for the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. A lot of your corporates kind of are world leading in terms of your targets and their kind of RE ambitions. We've seen them lead on kind of rooftop solar and then open access PPAs. But now to get to RE100, you know, we need storage. So I'd love to hear from you, you know, where corporates are looking at storage, what they're thinking about, how it's fitting into their plans, what kind of timelines they're looking at, and I'd love that perspective for you.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks a lot for this opportunity as well. It's great to be here. Corporates, yes, for sure, they are going to be, we clearly see a shift in corporates as well in terms of looking at energy storage in a very different perspective now. We did a study 2 years back on energy storage in India, and we looked at behind-the-meter energy storage for companies. From that until now, things have changed quite substantially. So I think one thing that stays with energy storage is this rapid change that is happening in the market almost on a monthly basis. So 2 years back, when we were talking to companies, we were at the question of, do we need storage? Do we have applications that would make sense for storage commercially? Right now, the discussions are which kind of storage. So how much and which kind. So I think that's the very positive shift that we have seen in the last 2 years that has been quite pleasant. In terms of we all know that everyone has, countries and companies have net zero targets. And WBCSD has been fortunate enough to work with some of the leading companies globally as well as in India, which have really advanced net zero targets. And decarbonization is one of the major levers within their corporate strategy, sustainability strategy as well. So in terms of commitment, we don't see anything lacking there. Companies are willing to take action. They're looking at, of course, the commercially viable solutions. There is, of course, some bit of premium that some of these large companies are ready to pay, but for companies like across the world and in India as well, nothing comes on the ground if it is not commercially viable. So I think that was one of the roadblocks in seeing commercially viable energy storage on the ground. But we've seen that with the rates dropping of the on-grid tenders, we've seen that change substantially. And hence, we've seen a very large uptake and willingness of companies to invest in storage.
And just very quickly before we move on, which applications, like is it the diesel genset replacement or is it wind solar hybridization? What are you seeing as the first movers for CNIs?
2 years back, what we said was it is making sense mainly for companies which are using diesel generators for power backup. Now companies are looking at using energy storage to provide stable power supply for their industrial processes as well. So this is, again, that's a tremendous change that we've seen over the years. It's, of course, when I say stable supply, please don't take it as 100% replacement of their existing coal. That's not something that is happening today and probably cannot happen today. Has to be a gradual shift, but companies are very willing to see how they can, with only renewables, with only solar and wind, they've been able to do 30%. They're now looking at how we can go from 30% to 60% with more renewables, more energy storage. And of course, the journey between, I think the analysis that we had was that until 60 to 70%, this is somewhat doable easily. But the journey from 70 to 100% is going to be indeed a difficult journey. But that's where companies are in terms of applications of energy storage now.
Surbhi, I'd like to add, one more application that is now coming up is on the because of the gross metering in the solar plus storage sector. They're also now looking at the time of the day tariff and peak demand shift. Most of these commercial ones, not the industrial ones, but the commercial ones are still looking at this. And this is some new request that has started coming in from the commercial side, not the industrial side, but from the commercial side. So this also is a very new important segment that's opening up.
Thanks so much. I think this is a really important message. We're not saying we need to be RE100 tomorrow, but can we move along the journey? And storage is helping us move in these different applications. With that, I want to move from the CNI side to the utility scale side. So we're very, very lucky here to have Satya from Gensol, which was the winner of one of the winners of these kind of massive 250, 500 megawatt hour storage tenders in Gujarat. So I'd love, firstly, if you could just provide a little bit more color and flavor on that tender. And specifically, I think two questions that are on everybody's mind is, are these prices sustainable? Are these prices here to stay? Are we going to see more tenders at this level, or is this an anomaly? And then the second question is can we ramp up? So, I think India is talking about, well, depending on, we're expecting the NPS revision any day now, but maybe it's 250 or 400 or maybe even more gigawatt hours of storage required by 2030, which is, hundreds-fold increase. Can we ramp up? Can companies like you, ramp up to meet that need?
Yeah, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, Alex, for having me here. So to answer your first part of the question, so Gensol has been the successful bidder for the GUNL Phase 2 project, which was the first pilot capacity-based tender which has come out in the month of March. And the second one which we went on to win was the Phase 3 project, where we won the 500 megawatt hour with the additional green show of another 500 megawatt hour. So together these two projects, the total capacity that Gensol has won is about 1.14 gigawatt hour. So the salient aspects of this tender is, of course, we are providing capacity as a service, on demand basis. Whenever GUNL wanted to schedule the BESS for charging or discharging, and primarily application is shifting the load from shifting the peak load to the evening. That's the primary application as of now. We do not anticipate any ancillary services as such. It's primarily shifting of energy for 2 cycles a day. And, the prices at which the tender 1 and tender 2 we won at was nearly like 15 to 17% lower compared to the first one. So the second tender the winning price or the bid price at which we won was 3.72 lakhs per megawatt, which translates, if I, as a customer, GUNL utilizes the BESS for 2 cycles a day, for the entire, say, 360 days or 300 days, the tariff for storage would cost something like 3.5 rupees per unit, which is, definitely was only possible because of the nature of the tender and not that, every application will have similar unit economics. It depends on what application and how many duty cycles the BESS is actually doing. Yeah, and the second part, in terms of sustainability of these prices, yes, the technology has really moved on, both at cell level as well as at the container. Of course, today the prices are, nearly at the bottom, I would say, because we have done a detailed evaluation of what goes exactly into the cell. And definitely there is sensitivity towards the basic commodities, which, we don't see that, like copper, aluminum contributing to a large volatility in the prices, but the lithium as such, I think the sustainable price for lithium carbonate today would be somewhere around, say, 100,000 RMB or about, say, maybe 9,000 to $10,000 per ton. And we are currently at, say, 70,000 RMB per ton. So even with this kind of sensitivity on the lithium carbonate, the dollar increase per kilowatt hour would not be much. So I don't see a lot of volatility, but there will be periods of short-term volatility. But I really hope that these prices would be sustainable in the long run. And in terms of the last part of the, I was very pleasant surprised. When we started as Anvi Power, looking at the energy storage market and how we want to position. So we intended to manufacture both energy storage for mobility sector as well as for energy storage, the grid batteries, what I call. So, we anticipated that the grid side would be a little slower and the market uptick would be, much slower because of the DISCOM's health or whatever reasons we call. But we were pleasantly surprised, in the last 6 months of journey, we see, I think Dev Malia is here, we see tenders every week. And today, the storage capacity that the customers are asking is nearly topping more than 12 to 13 gigawatt hour just for the BESS. I'm not including the pump hydro. So by 2030, I think we should see something like a cumulative installed capacity of more than 250 gigawatt hour at least. Even we go by CEA estimates, and annual market should be more than like 30 to 35 gigawatt hour.
Right.
But I see that happening much earlier.
I guess I still hear a lot of, especially policymakers and others, you kind of say, well, no, India needs new coal because demand is growing very fast, which I think we all agree is true, and we can't build RE, we can't build storage fast enough. And so I guess that's what I'm asking you is can you, from a development perspective, can you get the capital, can you get the land, are you able to kind of accelerate the deployment?
Yes. So, there are tenders where the DISCOMs, when they are floating the tender, they are providing land within the substation. That's a great relief for any developer, considering the, considering instead when you have to connect it a IST substation, when you need to have right of way as well as additional land which has to be acquired. That's additionally in the risk of the developer. Yeah, it's preferred that instead of passing on the complete risk to the developers, the owners or the utilities should have some, contribution in terms of helping the developers in mitigating this risk. And definitely, sorry, I missed the second part.
I'm just saying, I often hear people saying we can't build RE or we can't build storage fast enough. I mean,
Yes,
RE is a separate
yes,
question.
yeah,
That's a different
yeah,
panel. But
yeah, I got it.
Can we build storage fast enough? Yeah.
Yes. So the gestation period for putting up BESS is not really the BESS is not the critical critical factor there. But today the lead times for the transformers is that's on the critical path. And the second issue is to get the financing. Typically for the financial institutions, you need to go to a third-party evaluation route. And today, not many third-party evaluation companies have a deeper understanding of the technology to evaluate the risks. So instead of, rightly evaluating it generally happens that, highlighting the risk, which is again an impediment to the, financial closure or getting the funding.
Well, that's an excellent segue to our, our next panelist. But very quickly, what's the lead time for a transformer now?
It's 6 to 7 months
Oh,
minimum.
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, the lead time for a coal plant is 50 months, so we're still not too bad. Okay, but yes, okay. So financing, getting third-party financing, that leads excellently to Nishit, who works for KfW, which is kind of the German development finance bank. I'd love to learn more about what you as KfW are seeing and your perspective on energy storage, but also if I could get the perspective of what's going on globally, and then how that relates to the how India can position itself going forward.
Sure. Thank you, Alex, and good morning, everyone. I'm Nishit Srivastava. I'm not from a technical background, but maybe you can take me an odd man out. I'm from a financial background. But if you want to have storage solutions, if you want to have projects, they need to be financed by someone. And 70% of the financing comes from bank, 30% comes from equity and all. So we play one of the key leading roles in making solutions come on the ground. Now, when I talk about, I work with a development bank. Basically, development bank provides soft and concessional loans. Soft and concessional loans means loans which are below market rates. But we, as per our mandate, we are only allowed to work with government on government-to-government basis. So in that case, we offer soft and concessional loans to Government of India and their partners. And when we talk about what kind of loans we are offering developmental loans to them. And then there was also, I think, Surbhi, you mentioned decarbonization and other things are the future aspects. So when you talk about decarbonization, we need more renewables. And when we need balancing of the grids, we also need storage. So this is how we are now entering into this market. We are exploring projects. But before getting into the trajectory of storage sector, I just want to throw a kind of a small story. What we have seen from past, what is the current future, and where right now we are at the present. So maybe past, and then I will connect you to the future, and then I'll tell where we are at present. 5 or 10 years before, when we were talking about the energy transition, and India had started from kilowatts to megawatts to gigawatts. Now we have above 200 gigawatts of installations. But maximum of the installations in wind and solar has come from private sector. So when we talk to private sector, they have their own challenges and problems. They say getting an infrastructure to develop a renewable energy project, technical curtailment risk, not general curtailment, technical curtailment risk and offtake is one of the biggest challenges. And to manage that, they need short duration solutions. That can be through lithium ion for 1 hour, 2 hour, or up to 4 hours. Now, I'll turn back. When we talk to government stakeholders, for them, energy reliability, energy access, energy security, and domestic content are one of the key technologies which they want to talk for. And when we start discussing with them, for them, maturity, technical maturity, I think Rashi, you mentioned about technical trust and maturity. So that point comes from them. And their pump storage, long durational, transitional solutions are talked out. So, and when right now we see 200 gigawatts of installation which has happened right now, there are about 7 to 10 states where these installation has happened. And these are the states which are right now gearing up to have for future a kind of a solution to manage their grid and infrastructure. So this is kind of a trajectory where we are right now. But when we talk for the future prospects, we see, Satya, you mentioned that battery storage is something which is linked with mobility sector also. So we have seen that oversupply of electric vehicles and mobility sector is bringing the price down in chemical storage solutions. But still, right now, how these chemical storage solutions will be installed is something which needs to be checked out. And again, we are in debates with different developers and different stakeholders, how these solutions has to come up. So that's a kind of a story from a development bank's perspective, what we are looking into it. Right now, we are assessing all kinds of solutions, But when we talk to on behalf of Development Bank, something what we need to also look in future is kind of the trajectories in terms of environment and social aspects. There was Rashi who had mentioned about second life of battery, but there is also after second life waste disposable aspects are something which needs to be
There's
checked
a
out.
third life and then waste disposal.
I totally understand to it, but again, that is also something where we need to look into it. So we are analyzing a problem in a holistical manner, and then we want to develop some kind of projects. Now, when we talked about pump storage projects take its own sweet time to come in. They have their own environment and social problems and challenges. So in that aspect, still there are a lot of due diligence and feasibility which is happening on the ground. But when we talk about renewable energy trajectories, we need to move up to 500 gigawatts by 2030, and for that, I think we don't have time. So in that terms, yes, financing is important, but still it's a mystery from our side. But we are doing our due diligence, we are evaluating projects, and maybe by 2028 or by 2030, battery storage solution systems, especially electrochemical battery storage systems, would be same a mature technology and would be samely as bankable as today solar PV systems are. Thank you.
So thanks so much, and I think from the bankability perspective, I think thankfully we're seeing, and Satya, correct me if I'm wrong, but we are seeing storage products bankable now, especially when you've got a credible off-taker like GVNL. That's fair to say. The other thing I want to get different perspectives on, so you mentioned battery, you also mentioned PSP. What other technologies, and this can be anybody on the panel, but Dr. Rashi, perhaps you can start. What other storage technologies are you seeing deployed kind of abroad, and which ones are you kind of most bullish on that will be in India in the next 5 to 10 years?
He's put me in a tricky question here now. See, things are very fast abroad. I mean, the kind of business I do in Europe and US is not that I do in India. So the thing is, there's a lot of policy intervention also that plays a very critical role in understanding what India needs to do to take energy storage to the next level. But in terms of technology innovations, I'm seeing on the utility side, more on the frequency response and the time of the day tariff, and even backup storage is taking place abroad. But that has still, and even this storage trading that is happening, that is really something to look at in the US markets and the European markets, but not in Indian markets. We have not even thought of that. And there is this new, what do you say? Maybe a policy matter which has come up wherein they're allowing the group metering to take place, but that policy is still not implemented. We are waiting for that. Once that comes, I think storage will kick off even faster, because if you are generating it in the same metering zone, you could still add storage and make the maximum benefit out of it, because there you will have a time of the day tariff implemented. So that's a good case for India to actually look into and implement more storage in terms of one more sector to open up.
Go ahead.
Just
Surbhi, you want
quickly
to add?
on
Yeah.
technologies, I think that's also something globally that is changing pretty rapidly. If you look at, until, again, 2 years back, it was thought that lithium-ion is going to be the short-term energy storage option, and pumped hydro is likely to be the long-duration one. In Australia, just very recently, there's a new tender that was for 8-hour storage, which was won by lithium-ion. So that's something that is also changing. Now, of course, I'm not a technical expert to tell you the future of lithium-ion, but in terms of applications and duration of storage, that's something, technological developments are happening pretty fast. And lithium-ion, a technology that was only looked at as short duration, is now being looked at as long duration in a commercially viable manner as well. So, and of course, pumped hydro has its social aspects to it. Being one of the most traditional and most used technologies across the globe, China is super bullish on pumped hydro storage. That's something, China is looking at having half of the total global capacity in terms of developments that they're doing on pumped hydro. So I think it wouldn't be, of course, all assessments need to happen at their own paces, but it's something that and it's something that has to happen collectively, and it's a portfolio approach that would happen. Pumped hydro, in India, if you look at it, probably we're looking at 6 hours of storage. We don't probably have that market right now. So for us, lithium ion is working fine in India as well, because 4 hours is what you need. But with time, as the banking facility on the grid reduces, companies don't have access to it anymore. All the new regulations that are coming in would not provide you the banking facility that we've been provided until now. Then even the long duration energy storage would make sense. So it's a matter of time also, I think.
Also, I'd like to add here, Alex, that with the tanking prices, of the batteries right now, I think this would make sense even without subsidies in a very short while. I mean, yesterday we had this discussion at the CEO roundtable where I was there, and we just got the news that last 10 days, there's been another $20 shift. There's a downfall still $20 per kilowatt hour, and that's huge. Another important thing that I'm seeing abroad is hybridization of technologies coming together. Like we executed 5-6 projects in Europe, which is on hydrogen and battery hybrid. So combining these systems with solar, wind, batteries and hydrogen all together, making that mix in a microgrid in a way that you are completely energy independent. That makes more sense. I think like we did last 2 years back, we did a battery hybrid at Gurgaon where we had lead and lithium hybrid together, and now we are doing hydrogen and battery as hybrid together. So these are also some things that make sense. Why just run with one technology together? I mean, why cannot we collaborate between two technologies instead of competing with them? So that is also one of the concepts that is picking up in technological space.
Yeah, and I would encourage people to go visit this Om Shanti retreat. It's you got an excellent storage and solar hybrid. But yeah, I really like this point about having different technologies. Just last week we had Maharashtra with this pump storage tender. 85 lakh per megawatt year, which is less than half the cost of new thermal. They also approved a new thermal, which is about 180 lakh per megawatt year. So I think it's really, really important we don't kind of fight too much, pump storage versus BESS versus thermal storage, but rather say pump storage versus coal, battery versus coal, thermal versus coal, and what is the cheapest. Did you want to add something, Satya, or should I send it to the audience for? Okay. Do we have a mic for the audience? So I've got one more question, so I'll save it for the end. But if anybody in the audience wants to take a go at our panelists, we'll hand it off to you. Yes, always happy to have Dave.
Thank you. Dave Malia from World Economic Forum. So I have more of a comment here. When we talk about technologies, what we discount on the innovation that is happening within lithium-ion itself. Okay, there is this entire thing going on. For the longest of time, innovation happened on cathode side. But now if you see, innovation has started in the anode side, where graphite is being replaced by graphene to silicon to finally lithium. And if lithium's cost is so down, then that trajectory when we were saying that lithium anode can come by 2030 will be fast-tracked, one. Second, other techs like say a sodium ion or vanadium flow, which looks like the nearest of all. I think specifically with sodium ion, what is happening is with lithium ion's cost going down, it just becomes that much tougher for this technology to find its space here. And of course, pumped hydro, I think, as she said, it will go together rather than compete with each other. I think that is how we see. But my question is, apart from the sectors we talked about, there is one area where I feel batteries will have super demand, that is from data centers. I would love to have your thoughts. How are you seeing that area as a demand creator for batteries?
I agree completely with you on this, that data centers are the most electricity hungry, places where there is a lot of demand, and they are actually currently using multiple DG sets on a back-to-back basis so that they do not miss, if one light that is blinking in a data center is switched off, your transaction goes off. So it's super critical. And with the super critical infrastructure demands, you need super critical kind of technology to deliver it as well. So yeah, batteries will definitely make a lot of space. In fact, we did work with data centers, and we have that experience to see how critical it is to make sure. Similarly, to even hospitals, same rate of emergencies. You know, when you see that, you just cannot let them go down. So yes, definitely, I see a big market space there. But again, you know, they should have the technological confidence, which is still that we are trying to build, like he said. So that trust is still missing.
So, I mean, very pertinent point which you have mentioned. So, unofficially, I can mention that we are working with some of the generation companies of states, and they have identified certain regions, and like smart cities and all, maybe future data smart regions may be coming up. So, right now, we are doing some kind of scoping studies, and we are analyzing what kind of a solution and what kind of a requirement can come up. So, but it's right now it's at a very scoping stage, at a very initial stage that I can mention. That's the first point. That was your question. But before that, when you were mentioning about technological part, I would also like to bring in a different geometry here. You mentioned about there are a lot of R&D happening in lithium ion, cathode, anode. But I will also like to bring a different aspect, that is geopolitical aspect, is also something which is playing a key role. And that is also something which is putting the trust under a different basket. And sometimes it's not only the technology commerciality which works, there are other factors also which makes the technology viable on the ground. So these aspects are something, and maybe that is also a reason why India is more bullish still on pump storage. When we talk to old stakeholders working in power sector, then what we can see right now, the time with reference to how easy is to install a battery storage system, and it's a Lego block. You can amplify it as soon as possible, which is not possible in pump storage. Thank you.
Well, I'd just like to add here, so a brief plug. So Third Derivative, we support kind of innovative startups around the world. We've actually got a couple startups here in India. One is Off Grid Energy Labs, which is doing zinc gel batteries. We've got Volt 14, which is working on the anode side. So I think, to me, again, we need to get rid of this either-or mentality and say, we need to be deploying. We need Gensol doing gigawatts and gigawatts and gigawatts so that the people of Gujarat can have reliable, firm, clean power. And we also need to be investing in R&D and innovation. And I feel like sometimes there's this like, well, we can't deploy because we don't have 100% indigenization yet. To me, I think we need to be working on both streams in parallel.
Absolutely, Alex. I just add to, so today, while compared to say pump storage, the lithium-ion based solution is still seen like a foreign, source of, supply. So it's important that we build the supply chain in India from manufacturing of cell to the container. It's important to understand the nuances of the cell behavior, the BMS, balancing the cell. How does the degradation of a cell happens in a real world, and manufacturing them locally. Yes, the technology is very important. I think the technology itself has reached certain scale of maturity today that it's not super risky to really invest in manufacturing or, right from cell to the container. And that should be the focus as we plan to see a lot of tenders coming up in the capacity required for the country. The local manufacturing has to evolve. While we have to also service, it's not setting up and, we leave the site. We have to operate it for 12 years. And the developer's risk is much higher, when the availability of the system is, not meeting, you don't get service in time, or there is a premature failure of the system. Yeah.
Again, can I bring another point associated to it? So one is, you mentioned about local manufacturing supply chain, but again, when we talk to private sector, for an investment in India, they also need to recoup that investment in future. So for that, we need not only short-term, but we need medium and long-term policy clarity. That's the first thing. And secondly, the speed of rapid change of technology is also something. Today, I can buy an iPhone 16, but maybe 6 months down the line, I'll say iPhone 17 is coming. And there will be a FOMO factor that my friend is having iPhone 17 and I'm having iPhone 16. So this is also a hindrance which is bringing in. So sometimes these are intangible factors, but sometimes they are also putting and plicking this technological aspect. Thank you.
Yeah, but no, I think that FOMO, it's been a huge problem plaguing the Indian RE sector where, we have a tender for 4.5 rupees a kilowatt hour, and they say, no, I want 4.4, I want 4.3, and then so we cancel the tenders, and then we're not building it fast enough, and they say, okay, we'll go build a new coal plant at 6 rupees a kilowatt hour. So I think we need to get over this FOMO and start deploy. And this is where Gujarat's shown a lot of leadership where they said, we're going to honor these old contracts even if we can get cheaper prices today. We're still going to go ahead and honor the projects from yesterday, which means that even if we can get cheaper prices tomorrow, we're still going to honor the projects today. We have time for a couple more questions from the audience. If anybody's got a comment they want to make, a comment or question.
Hi. I had a question around the investment in kind of grid structuring, just because it's all fair and well building out massive energy storage deployment. But if we can't transfer and distribute the energy in the first place, it's a bit of a nightmare. So I was wondering, I'm coming from the UK and we're having a disaster with our own grid and kind of upscaling and improving it. And I'm just wondering from the Indian context, what kind of financing is in place to support local players to improve the grid and ensure that it can last with the energy storage going forward?
I think India wants to reach up to 500 gigawatts of renewable energy trajectories by 2030. And definitely the enabling infrastructure is one of the key aspects. So in that aspect, Government of India has identified certain corridors. As I've also mentioned, around 7 to 10 states are the renewable rich states where most of the renewable energy injection is happening. So both at interstate and intrastate, there are green energy corridors which have been planned. And these corridors are supporting the these corridors are supporting the green energy evacuation. So that is with reference to developing of the hardware part. But when we talk about software part, there are also renewable energy management centers which are also developed. So that is where maybe these storage aspects, new technological aspects are also being are coming up in those aspects. So with reference to infrastructure, this is the part. While your second point was on the private sector, when the government is coming on this green energy corridor projects, they have identified solar parks and all. And apart from solar parks, the contractual, the construction part of these projects are basically done by private sector. So that is how the private sector is also engaged in. And in terms of financing, I can mention on behalf of KFW, we have financed 1.4 billion euros in this green energy product, in this green energy project infrastructure development with states, and another 0.5 billion euros with the Power Grid Corporation for intrastate. And there are other donors also like ADB. My panelist from World Bank is not here. They have also invested large amount of funds with Government of India. While for private sector, they are doing their financing from domestic funds, majorly coming from REC, PFC, and other banks.
And I do want to add briefly, I come from Canada, but if you go look at the CEA transmission planning for 500 gigawatt integration by 2030, it is a world-class document. And I always say, we need to be having MISO and ERCOT take a learnings. We need to have a technical assistance program to bring the Indian grid planners to US to help them with their grid planning. Because I was talking to someone from Power Grid. I said, oh, there's these big transmission delays. And I said, how long does it take? I said, well, it's supposed to be done in 24 months, and it took us 28 months. And I'm like, in Canada, new transmission line would take 7, 8, 9, 10 years, right? So I think, don't get me wrong, there's lots of things we need to move in India, but I think transmission is one where India's actually done a phenomenal job.
Just a quick addition here, and you rightly said that the grid infrastructure is very key when it comes to integrating renewables. And globally, we are seeing, we would say that grid infrastructure is an enabler, but globally, we see that it is being a blocker in a way. And I think India, like Alex and Nishit said earlier, that we've been a bit ahead of the curve as compared to the globe. For instance, in If you look at getting a new connection in Netherlands, you would have to wait for around 8 to 10 years to get new electricity flowing into your homes or your industrial complexes. In India, given the great interconnectivity of the grids that we have within the country, which is actually equivalent to a continent, that has supported really, really well in terms of how renewables has been integrated into the system. So and the planning and the great planning in the transmission lines that go from the Central Electricity Authority and as well as the transmission companies, that has been quite instrumental in ensuring that we're not there yet in terms of looking at grid as being a blocker.
I'd like to add something. I'm not going to add on the financial side here. I mean, there are many experts on that, but something that all the countries have to look into, because see, the grid generation, transmission and distribution is common to everybody across the globe. Something that we all need to think about is how we can strategically place correctly sized storage at all the 3 levels and control it centrally. Once we do that, we will have a very good control over the entire mechanism. I think GIZ is doing some experiment on this. I mean, I cannot divulge more details, but then they are doing something on this. And if we can achieve that centrally controlled BESS throughout and strategically place them, I think we can solve a major problem of the grid infrastructure with very minimal investment.
And again, another plug for one of our companies. We've got this company called Sharu, for example, which is doing exactly that. So they've got these battery swapping stations. So the battery swapping is used for the auto rickshaws, the electric rickshaws. But then the auto rickshaw drivers will swap during the day, and they actually have that capacity now sitting there. So in the evening, when Delhi's short power, they can then inject back into the grid and do grid balancing, and you could do all sorts of things. Now, unfortunately, the regulatory framework is still evolving, and they haven't fully figured out how to compensate them for providing these ancillary services, for providing this peaking power. But again, I think it's a great example of how you've got Indian companies that are really leading at the forefront on the technology side. Anish, I'll let you add there. Yeah.
I mean, again, some out-of-the-box comment here again. I mean, this is a very valid point, Rashi, which you have mentioned. But the problem in India is that electricity is a concurrent subject. It's a state subject as well as is a central subject. And the another challenging thing is that they are just like a track of a railway. They are running parallel, but they never converge with each other. The day they start converging, the things will change.
I completely agree, and that is the sole reason why I said everybody in the world is doing generation, distribution, and transmission. If we cannot do this in India, let's do some other country do it and do it as a pilot and go ahead with it. Because this is something which will change the energy landscape in totality.
I have a question for Mr. Satyanan. We are based out of Gujarat. We are also an EPC of sorts. I've seen the rise of Gensol from being what it was and what it is now. My question is, what is the one challenge that you anticipate working with GUVNL and the transmission companies and so on and so forth in terms of the BESS coming about in the time frame that you've been allocated to execute the tender, including the ISTS connectivity? What is the one biggest challenge that kind of keeps you awake, if it does?
So on the, we had a very good customer, definitely, to start with, GUVNL. So we need not worry about the land, definitely. It's already in the position of JETCO. And JETCO itself is providing us the connectivity. We are not going for ISTS. This is STU connected, so the hassles are much lesser here. And in terms of executing the project as a EPC company, Gensol being the EPC company here itself is, if you look at closely the risks for a EPC company or a developer, eventually if the developer has to transfer the risk to EPC, the expectation from battery energy storage is much more than any conventional plants, right? It has to be available. It's not like a solar operates for 4 hours and just, and it's not a static equipment. Definitely there is a lot of electrochemistry going inside. And it has to be scheduled like 4 hours in the daytime and another 4 hours in the night. We don't know when it happens. Definitely, we only know on a day-ahead basis. So, getting the warranties covered from the battery manufacturers, what degradation you have considered and how much you are oversizing the system. And if you go wrong in the battery performance, then the penalties are very high. So you need to obviously have a lot of contingency. And while you are also trying to be very competitive, optimizing every drop of juice that is left in the, the whole EPC cost. So I think the time will tell. We still have to play very good engineering practices in terms of, the infrastructure, not compromising on the, whether it is small aspects like drains or roads, the access to the BESS, that has to be kept. The good engineering practices allowing the safe and, reliable operation of the entire bus. And managing the warranties and what happens if the degradation or the availability goes less. And obviously the damages are very high. Even a 1% shortfall in the availability of 95%, which I consider is very high, the damages could be the extent of like $2 to $3 million a year. So our whole project, in terms of project cost, is significantly high.
Yeah, I think this is another interesting area where again, there's a contrast between RE and storage and coal, right? Like, we're holding RE and storage and saying if they don't meet this availability requirement, you're getting a penalty of 2. And so this is why it's very important from the financing's perspective and from the developer's perspective. Are we oversizing? Are we checking all the boxes? Are we making sure we're rated to meet the requirement, which is something, again, that coal doesn't have. This kind of leads me to my last question. Another kind of stringent requirement and something that people always ask me about is safety, UL rating or IEC ratings, 40 degrees, but India gets 45, it gets 50. How are we making sure that the batteries in India can withstand the Indian conditions and make sure we're not going to have any battery fires here?
Well, see, if you design your systems correctly, if you use the right components, and if you have a really robust and a good BMS, your batteries will not catch fire. I have been saying this on many forums. I'm also at Bureau of Indian Standards as well as United Nations, so I know that this is very critical. And we as industry or as consumers or as manufacturers have been compromising on this. And this is not the right approach. That's the reason why we have these EV fires. Thankfully, still now we have not had too much of BESS fires, but there have been fires in Korea, China, and US, and we need to learn our lessons from them. Something very important that we need to understand at the policy level is that we have very good standards made in India. I mean, very good standards. In fact, India was the first ever country globally to write a battery management system standard. But implementation is not India's forte. We got to learn how to implement these rules and regulations and the standards that we write to real grassroots level. We have been missing that on every aspect in the country, not just energy storage for that matter. Everywhere, I can see him laughing out of it, and he knows what I mean by that. So if we learn how to implement these standards, I think we will be very, very safe from the fires that we are anticipating or we may foresee. And I would really say that, in my career of 12, 13 years in energy storage in India, my products have not had a fire or, there's a warranty claim or something, because it has to be robust. You've got to test it. You've got to make something which is good. You cannot, when in 2016, Alex, when I was at BIS, and I saw this e-rickshaw batteries coming in, at that time I had just told them, that you guys are entering into a war zone, with fires. Please don't do that, because, okay, the rickshaw driver, okay, is nobody on the planet, okay? He does not have anything. But the people who are sitting in that rickshaw, who are the users of that rickshaw, they have an insurance also. They have all every like a passport or every ID card they have, and they're the citizens of India. You cannot play with a life. So now when we start valuing our lives more than the bank balance, that day you will be absolutely safe in the country.
This is why I wanted to bring this question up, because I knew that, obviously, Vision Mechatronics has done a fantastic job on this. And I actually, Satya, I'd love your opinion just a second. But, I always like to use the example of the Rajasthan. People say, oh, solar's unreliable. You had 9 gigawatts of solar fall. And it's like, no, we know
it's
what
not.
the answer was.
I mean, I have installations in the desert in Rajasthan, and they're working fine.
Fine.
Yeah, you got to give them that amount of cooling, which is needed for the system, and it's not expensive. Please understand. I mean, I was in the morning recording, and there we were discussing the same thing. The point is, what is the value of the system that you're creating versus what is the money you're going to invest in it? Okay, I buy a system at X price, okay, and I'm paying a premium for something which is more robust. And if that premium is going for a decade, I'm in a much value position than rather than having a system at X price which does not function. So one has to understand what is the value you are going to create out of the system, and there is absolutely no problem with the temperatures in the country. Yeah. We got to design our systems which can withstand those temperatures and not cut corners into it.
Yeah, and this is where, the L1 mentality, I think, is really dangerous.
That has to go away.
And again, it's about enforcing these standards. Low voltage ride-through is not, it's a very well understood technology. The standards is there. The grid operator knows what to do it, but we just need to enforce it and make sure that all the developers are maybe not hold it to quite Rashi standard, but hopefully close. But yes, I'd love to hear a little bit about how Gensol is approaching this question and what you're doing for your projects.
Yeah, LFP offers definitely some comfort compared to the other type of chemistries. And these containers are definitely designed to be safe, tested for various standards, especially in the event of a thermal runaway. The propagation should not happen from cell to cell or from pack to pack. That's a key, element of design philosophy behind it. But I would, is this enough? I would say no. There is definitely a way to go in terms of management of fire and fire risk with respect to batteries. We generally see the whole container catching fire in case of some of the global fire incidents from NMC, most of them probably. So the focus should be on completely stopping the fire at cell or at the pack level. So we need innovative strategies there. How do we this is IP67 pack, you can obviously seal it, and you can safely extract it. So there are companies which are working on completely managing the risk within the pack so that it doesn't completely spread. But I think we will see that generation of packs and containers coming as we go forward. But I would at the same time like to highlight the more important aspect is a lot of companies do not know how do they manage in case of a fire incident. So they need to be not just a SOP at the company level, but there need to be a regulation on how do you, manage or respond to say, a fire incident of especially a battery. What is do's, what you should not do. Generally, most of the casualties or accidents happen. The moment there is fire, the first responder goes and just opens the battery rack or the container door. So which should not be done. So that's something also requires a lot of awareness, not just the company which is operating, but also the responders and the local the community.
We need to have training programs to train the trainers also, and to train the government officials and the local people and even the fire responders, because there's a nice program done by UL every year on fire safety into EVs and batteries, and they work with the fire responders, where we also collaborate with them, and the firefighters, and they're taught how to actually deal with that fire if something like that happens, because they don't know what to do. And like we said, I agree there has to be an SOP, but there has to be a pre-training drill also, if something happens, like you do an earthquake drill in the schools and colleges and, even in offices. So same kind of drill also should be done in BESS, and there should be some mandatory guidelines, that these are my minimum requirements and minimum parameters that need to be followed if you are having a BESS in the place.
We're at time, but final thoughts, Nishit? Yeah.
Very shortly. Again, in English, this word is called frugal innovation, and in Hindi, it means jugaad. So India is kind of a society where cost and jugaad is criticality in our blood. So we have to move out of it. That's it.
Well, thank you so much to all our panelists. I think we did a phenomenal job getting a lot of different perspectives. Hopefully, it was valuable to the audience as well. I personally am very excited for the future of energy storage in India, and having such fantastic leaders like the people on stage pushing it forward is very inspiring and hopeful. So thanks everyone for your time, and I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you. I must say, very pertinent, very crucial discussion. Thank you once again. A huge round of applause for this wonderful and very valuable information that's been discussed. And thank you so much to all our audience for participating so well. I wish we had a little more time. We could have had more networking discussion, but we can do that in our break times as well. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Informa, we thank our panelists by presenting mementos, a token of love and appreciation. Thank you so much for being here. And may I request the moderator of the session to kindly present the mementos to the panelists. We'd like to present a memento to Dr. Rashi Gupta. Thank you so much. A huge round of applause as we present and thank Dr. Rashi Gupta. And we move to the center for a good click, capturing it in our lenses and, of course, in our memories. A big thank you to Ms. Surbhi Singhvi. Thank you so much, Alex. You have to again do the honors. Thank you so much, Ms. Singhvi, for wonderful pointers that you bring forward. Maybe now thank Mr. Satyanarayan Reddy. Thank you so much, Mr. Desai, for sharing your thoughts with us. And a big thank you to Mr. Nishit Srivastava, bringing the finance point of view to the session. Thank you, Mr. Srivastava. And may I request you all to kindly put your hands together as we thank the moderator of the session, Alexander Hogewin, and may I present a memento on behalf of Informa to Alexander. Can be uploaded on the social media immediately.